I couldn't help myself. I couldn't. Please, you have to understand.
Trust me, I definitely understand.
Hey guys, Pete here. Today I'm going to do a recap of the first season of Dexter. I'm going to talk about everything that happens in this introduction to the series' main character. That includes the ending, so there will be spoilers if you haven't seen the season. But even though this is a rewatch recap, I won't be directly spoiling anything that happens in future seasons. With that out of the way, let's get started. In Season 1, you meet Dexter and learn rather quickly who he is and what makes him tick at the beginning of the series. He is a dedicated serial killer. You get the impression that this normal-looking guy who's in his early 30s, this is really what his existence revolves around. Over the course of the season, you realize he's compelled to kill. Still, it isn't completely dark. He's actually a quite likable character considering. They achieve this in various ways. First, he's self-aware, and you're given insight into his thinking through a voiceover. This makes you feel like you're in on it because you know the secrets that the rest of the characters are missing. It also removes some of the mystery, and it makes it feel alright to just enjoy this curious and amusing character. The other thing they do, and this works a lot better than it sounds when you say it out loud, Dexter is a serial killer that only kills other killers. He deals with and manages his compulsion by following the Code of Harry, a set of guidelines that include things like don't get caught and blend in socially, but more importantly, things like never kill an innocent and only target killers that have escaped justice. Harry was Dexter's adoptive father, who you see as he works through issues in his mind. When Dexter has to make a difficult decision, he remembers the things that Harry taught him before he died, and therefore he's a regular character. You learn that Harry was a police officer who was all too familiar with the idea that some people got away with doing horrible things. They slipped through the cracks. And we see right in the pilot that he recognizes at an early age that there's something different about Dexter when he discovers the grave of their neighbor's missing dog, Buddy. The code doesn't absolve him, but it does make things more interesting because in his own mind he thinks he's being righteous. He thinks he needs to kill. This was backed up by Harry in his formative years, and this is more palatable because it's delivered through this framework of delivering justice for people who got away with murder. You don't like what he does, but you tend to minimize that because you like the character. In his first on-screen kill of Michael Donovan, pastor, choir master, pedophile, serial killer, is a perfect example of this. Nobody would argue that this guy being stopped from what he's doing is some kind of tragedy, and so Dexter's there to take care of it. In the second killing he does, we get a better idea into how his process works. When he goes after Jamie Jaworski, who was a sexual sadist that kidnapped, raped, and killed his victim in a snuff film, only to get off when he was caught because of a bad search warrant, you see Dexter follow him, you see him get proof of his guilt, and then you see how he sets up the kill room and how things play out. And we see that continue with his third kill of Matt Chambers, who's a remorseless drunk driver who kills someone and gets away with it. It's established that Dex is careful, elusive, and he feels justified in his choice of victims. Part of how he discovers those is from his day job as a forensic specialist. He's a blood spatter expert at Miami Metro Police Department, where he comes off as being a little odd, but most of his coworkers write this off as him being a lab geek. In Season 1, we also meet the cast regulars at the station, fellow forensic specialist Vince Masuka, Detective Angel Batista, Sergeant James Dokes, and Lieutenant Maria LaGuerta. Of those, Dokes is the only one who thinks there's something wrong with Dexter, and we see his suspicions escalate throughout the first season. The main characters are rounded out with Dex's adoptive sister Debra Morgan and his girlfriend Rita. Deb is pretty much the opposite of Dexter personality-wise. She swears a lot, she's direct, sometimes emotional, but she actually does take her job as a police officer seriously, following in Harry's footsteps. In season 1, she gets transferred out of Vice and into homicide, and this creates a situation where she's sometimes pursuing the same criminals as her brother, but the siblings have different ideas of how justice should be served. Dexter's relationship with Rita starts out just as a way to help him fit in. She's a single mother of 2 whose abusive ex-husband's in prison, and part of why he thinks their relationship works is because she's as damaged as he is. Beyond introducing you to Dexter and the other main characters, the first season also lays the groundwork for the structure the show follows throughout its early seasons. There are kills of the week like the 3 I mentioned earlier, plus Jorge and Victoria Castillo that I'll come back to, and the therapist Emmett Meridian. The kills of the week are all characters that generally appear in one episode. Dexter researches them, pursues them, and he does his thing. There's also side stories with the other characters. Sometimes those are tied in with Dexter and sometimes they're not. There's also usually a story about Dexter's personal life, and then there's the season's main adversary or antagonist that presents a sort of existential threat that stretches out over all the episodes. For the side stories in season 1, Dokes is caught up in an investigation where an undercover cop and his wife both end up dead. It comes out that James was having an affair with the wife who was waiting for her husband to finish his undercover assignment before getting a divorce. This leads to Dokes being on the radar of the cartel boss who ordered their murders, and the victim's brother, who's also a cop, is giving him trouble about the affair. It all wraps up with James getting kidnapped by the drug lord, and then that turns out to be a trap set by the brother, who swoops in to make an arrest. Also, Dokes gets involved with a Haitian man who he sees walking across the bridge. He jumps out of the car and kills him before Angel catches up. Dokes says the victim shot first, but Angel doesn't believe that's how it went down based on what he heard. He eventually decides to tell the truth after being pushed by internal affairs, only to find out that they dropped the case in the end. This establishes that Angel is more or less an honest cop, and that Dokes has a secret past that LaGuerta and Angel think might be related to the CIA or Black Ops because of how it played out. Beyond that, Angel is separated from his wife, he had an affair and he told her about it because of that honesty, and eventually gets a divorce. Deb struggles to make her way in the homicide unit, and LaGuerta clearly doesn't like her and tries to hold her back. Maria has her own problems with Captain Matthews, who views her as a threat, and after some political maneuvering that goes back and forth, he ends up replacing her. In his personal relationships, Dex works through his intimacy issues with Rita, and once their relationship starts to be somewhat normal, her ex-husband gets released early from prison. Paul, who was physically abusive and refused to sign divorce papers, tries to reconcile with Rita, who isn't interested. He lays it on heavy with the kids. Despite him being an awful person, he does seem to love them. Rita grants him supervised weekly visits in exchange for the divorce, but he eventually shows up at her house drunk one night and tries to force himself on her. She hits him with a bat in self-defense, and he manages to turn that around, filing charges for assault in an effort to win custody. This all proves to be annoying for Dexter. He ends up getting involved, knocking Paul out with a frying pan in Rita's kitchen after they have some words. And then he takes him back to his room and sets him up by injecting him with heroin so that he'll violate his parole. In prison, Paul has no idea how he got there. He suspects that Dexter's involved, but he can't remember how things happened, and he realizes that he was missing a shoe when he got arrested. He pesters Rita by phone. He's trying to implicate Dexter, and she pretty much ignores him because their relationship is going really well. By the end of the season, though, she finds the shoe and is forced to think that Dex might have been involved in what happened. While all of this is going on, the ice truck killer case is looming over the Miami Metro Police Department. He's a serial killer that dismembers the bodies of his victims after draining their blood. This leaves an impression on all the responders at the crime scene at a motel in the pilot episode, including Dexter. The MO matches 2 previous victims that were discovered in nearby Broward County, and the discovery of another in the first episode makes it pretty clear that the crimes are related and that they're the work of a serial killer. While talking with Deb, who mentions that the body parts were cold at the last crime scene, Dexter guesses he might be using a refrigerated truck, and when this turns out to be the case, he earns the name the Ice Truck Killer. Things get personal with the case when Dexter sees a refrigerated truck, follows it, only to get the head of one of the victims tossed at his car. Later, when he returns to his apartment, he finds the head of a doll stuck on his refrigerator. Inside, he discovers the rest of the doll, cut up in the same way that the victims were at the crime scenes. As the investigation continues, it has effects on the department, like Deb finding the truck and that getting her promoted to homicide. A couple of wrong suspects are named as the killer, and that sets off the tensions between the captain and LaGuerta. And this situation establishes the precedent of Dexter wanting to solve the case for his own selfish reasons before the police get a chance to make an arrest. The first suspect that the department focuses on that turns out to be innocent is a security guard named Tony Tucci. He was forced to place body parts of a victim at the ice rink he worked at while it was all caught on camera. Later, his body parts started showing up at different locations in Miami that only Dexter knew were tied to his childhood memories that the ice truck killer learned about from looking at photos inside of his apartment. Dex is lured to an old closed-down hospital where he finds Tony, who's missing those body parts but still alive. He's presented on a kill table with knives at the ready, but Dexter decides not to kill him because he doesn't fit the criteria of the code. Instead, he tips off Deb anonymously, and she's able to rescue him and get him to a hospital. There she meets his prosthetist, Rudy Cooper, who over time sweeps her off her feet. As their relationship develops, it becomes pretty clear that he's really interested in getting close to Dexter, but he does a good job of keeping that fact from her, and she falls in love with him. In the same episode that she makes the relationship public with her co-workers, Rudy is revealed to be the ice truck killer when you see him alone in his apartment that has the walk-in freezer. By this time, he's done a lot in the way of communicating with Dexter killer to killer. The head on the truck, the dolls, the body parts and locations from his photos, leaving Tony for an easy kill, messages on Craigslist, and he even resurfaced the body of Dex's victim, Valerie Castillo, which led to a lot of tension at work when a young witness who was hiding in the trunk of a car was discovered during the investigation. You can see that the ice truck killer is trying to connect with Dexter, knowing full well that he's a serial killer too, and things all come together when he gets a letter saying that his biological father has died and left him a house. This leads to everyone coming together and Dexter learning that Harry lied to him about his real parents being dead. He had already started to remember what happened when he was a kid during the therapy sessions that he was doing to investigate Emmett Meridian, and now Rudy has injected himself into his life as someone he can talk to. You also find out that he killed the biological dad and made it look like a heart attack to set things in motion. This is followed up by a staged crime scene at a hotel where there aren't any bodies, but it's filled with the blood of at least 5 people. When Dex is sent in first, he has a panic attack and is unable to work the scene after collapsing. Deb makes the connection that the blood is from the ice truck killer's victims. After talking to an amputee at a club, Angel has a hunch that there's a connection to the case. He goes to ask Rudy about the fetish, and that leads to him getting stabbed. Later, Dexter decides to confront his fear after being encouraged by Rudy, and when he goes back to the hotel room, he relives his suppressed memory. He remembers that he watched his mother's brutal murder when he was 3 years old. This sets him on a path to understand his past. He finds out his mother was working as a police informant who was killed, but can't find any mention about her leaving behind a kid in the news reports. While the investigation is starting to close in on Rudy, Deb, who's fully in love, finds out through Dex that he's thinking of proposing, and we also see that Dokes is starting to wonder if Dexter might be connected to the case. After finding blood from the attacker on Angel's shirt and testing it, Dexter learns that Rudy is the ice truck killer. He tries to keep Deb away from him, but she's already gone to see him on a yacht that he chartered, where he proposes and she accepts, only to be drugged with a celebratory glass of champagne, and from there she becomes his prisoner. Dexter frantically tries to find her and discovers that Rudy's left clues for him to follow. The police department is able to find out his true identity, and they find his apartment and kill room. A clue there leads Dex to his mother's home, where he experiences a memory from childhood. Rudy is there too, he's waiting for him, and it's revealed that he's his biological brother who was also there when his mother died in the shipping container. His real name is Brian Moser, and he tells Dex about his past. Harry only saved Dexter because he thought he was young enough to block it out. His older brother was committed to a mental hospital. He was pleasantly surprised when he tracked down his brother and learned that they are the same. And now he wants them to be together. He accepts Dexter as he is and says that they can be free to be themselves and to kill together. The only thing that he needs is for Dex to kill Deb to get her out of the picture. Faced with a tough decision, Dexter struggles but ultimately chooses Deb, and Brian initially escapes as he turns on him and the police arrive. Later, he sets up a trap at his apartment and catches his brother when he arrives to finish Deb off. In an emotional send-off, Dexter kills his brother in his own kill room, making it look like a suicide. The police are fooled, and the ice truck killer case comes to a close. When we meet Dexter at the beginning of the season, based on his own desires, he had a pretty good thing going. He's been able to satisfy his dark passenger into his 30s, 10 years after Harry passed away. He was able to keep this part of him a secret, and it was all built on the foundation of Harry's code. As Dexter starts to remember his mother's death and begins to realize that Harry kept information from him, he begins to question everything. You see him struggle with his reality throughout season 1. At one point, he decides not to kill Jeremy Downs after learning about him being raped by his victim. And they have a conversation in jail after Jeremy kills again. The idea of him doing it just because he wanted to feel something, and Dexter understanding that, it calls into question the idea of killing being justified as simply taking out the trash. It shows that Dexter also does it because he gets something from it. He gets off on it. And Jeremy's choosing suicide is an example of a different path. While he tells himself that what he's doing is righteous, he actively misleads everyone around him and only recognizes this as a problem that he mostly justifies away when he hurts Deb or Rita in the process. In the beginning of the season, he doesn't think he has feelings and believes the only way he can survive is to rely on the code. Since he has a secret life, he can't confide in anyone when he has a dilemma, and this is why he manifests Harry in his mind to try to work everything out himself. So by the end, what Brian offered him was what he truly wanted. Someone he could be himself around and someone that would accept that he had to kill. When he killed his brother, he lost something real and proved that he does have feelings by choosing Deb and mourning Brian. At the end, he imagines people celebrating him for it and even being thankful for his other kills and that he's making the world a better place as a result. Deep down, though, he knows that they would also recognize the brutality in his form of justice and would likely think of him as a monster if they knew the truth. By the time everything is wrapped up, he's able to keep his secret, the police have their man, and his adoptive sister is safe. Things can mostly return to normal. Unfortunately, on her way to take out the trash, Rita notices Paul's shoe right where he said it would be. Dexter sees that Dokes is now following him because he knows he has something to hide, and there's no one left alive that can handle his truth. He learned a lot about himself in the first season. He revealed a lot about his childhood and how he became what he is, but it served to make him question his beliefs. And that seems like the perfect place to leave things. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Be sure to check back for more Dexter videos. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.